Story 1. We did a weird assignment for a month where we ran a society for an hour each day in our classroom. People had little shops they ran from their desks. There were elected positions, laws you could be ticketed for breaking, etc. It was all run on fake money, of course. I got elected chief of police and handed out tickets for stuff like chewing gum in class. But a combination of laziness and not wanting everyone to hate me caused me to slack off, and I got fired after 2 weeks. So I opened a shop instead and sold stuff, including gum, which, in hindsight, makes me like a cop who became a dealer. The final week of this rolls around, and there's an announcement. At the end, all your money will be tallied up, any debts or taxes you owe subtracted, and any kid who wound up with a positive amount gets a pizza party. Kids who are in the red have to write an assignment on how and why they screwed up. This electrifies the class. Missing out on a pizza party is a big damn deal when you're 10, and well under half the class is currently in the black. Tons of them had taken out big loans in the beginning to set up businesses, and had no way to repay them. Not me, though. I'd been receiving a salary as a cop, and after being fired, I just used the money I had accumulated to set up shop and had no debts. Few in the class could say that, so I was sitting pretty. Soon, I started receiving offers of real money on the playground for some of my fake money. You only needed to be $1 over zero to win, so I could spare plenty. Made $40 in actual cash. I think I charged $5 for 100 fake dollars and got 8 people to accept. So I was a corrupt cop who became a dealer who became a money launderer and won. So I definitely learned a lot about how society works. Story 2. Our middle school tried to start a rewards program. It turned out to be a failure of epic proportions. Wolf Bucks, named after our mascot. They were mini-sized dollars color-coded by value. Green was $1, red was $5, blue was $10, and a gold wolf buck, only accessible to the principal and assistant principal, was $50. Now the school bought erasers, pencils, notebooks. You could only buy with wolf bucks. One pencil equaled one wolf buck. First failure. It was easy to copy, so kids started mass copying them. Okay, school got smart and said, only accept wolf bucks with your name and have your teacher's signature. Second failure, kept the same color, so kids would earn one legitimately when the forgery started. Third failure, hyperinflation. During pep rallies, the principal started throwing golden wolf bucks. Eventually, the school stopped resupplying the store. Everyone had hundreds and thousands of worthless wolf bucks. Story 3. In early elementary school, we had a market for mud. Different groups of kids would claim areas around the school as their mud pit and put their brand of mud in Ziploc bags to be traded with other groups for different bags of mud. We were the clay mud group, and I had about 3 kids in the muck scooping it into bags or running to the water fountain to get fresh water to make more mud on dry days. I would be the one to go make the deals with the other groups. We traded a lot with the gravel mud group because clay mud and cement mud are both good for building or some shit. Who knows? It made so much sense at the time. The principal and staff eventually stepped in to end it because all the kids came back to class filthy every day and giant holes littered every field and playground. Story 4. I wouldn't say it was weird, but my friend in high school had a prepper granddad who was waiting for Y2K. He literally had crates filled with cartons of off-brand cigarettes. So my friend would steal a few cartons, bring them to me, and I'd sell them out of my locker. I'd charge $3 a pack. He'd get $1 and I'd get the other 2, or 50 cents for loose cigarettes, and we'd just split that down the middle. I only kept like 6 packs in a pencil case, 5 whole, and 1 open for the loose ones to sell, in my locker at a time. He'd have the rest in his locker at the other end of the school, and I would just go refill as needed between classes or at lunch. One time, a teacher called the cops because I was acting suspicious. They pulled me out of class and brought in a dog to search my locker. I had sold my last Lucy and pack like 10 minutes before that. The dog didn't find anything, but the cops went through everything anyway. When he opened the pencil box, there were little shreds of tobacco inside. He asked, "What's this?" And I said, Well, it's a pencil box. I'd guess it's probably pencil shavings. And he just shrugged and put it back. Went right back to selling cigarettes the next day. Oh, I'd also traded one Lucy for a meal ticket. That's how our lunch system worked. And would also sell the meal tickets for $1 each and split that with my buddy too. Story 5. Bottle caps. I still don't get it, but back in primary school, they were collecting bottle caps for some kind of charity. Google it, it's still ongoing around the world. So, what happened was everything was going well. The teacher got everyone excited about it, and kids were collecting it en masse. Kids would go around raiding for it, from the trash, from their school lunches, from their homes even. A teacher got a call from a concerned parent because her kid hijacked all the bottle caps from their kitchen. So that's stage 1 of the weirdness. It's what happened afterwards. Stage 2, kids started trading with these plastic bottle caps. We would trade pens, homework, and even Pokemon cards for bottle caps. Worthless bottle caps. There wasn't even a prize for whoever could collect the most caps. It just became a currency out of nowhere. Let's talk about stage 3 of the madness: theft. There was no bank of bot cops at our school. There was the donation box, and there were your cubbies. Those who didn't want to lug their stash back home every day left it in their cubbies, and some kid decided to steal people's caps and from the donation box. The great theft of Class 3B, but it was probably for the best because overnight, the madness subsided. The teacher ended the bottle cap donation. She was sick of the bugs that were gathering and licking up the dried up sugar juices from the caps, but mostly horrified at how her little charity drive devolved into a socio-economical experiment. Just like that, the bottle cap market crashed. Story 6. Mountain Dew and Pepsi had a contest where college names were printed on the inside of the bottle caps. If that school won the NCAA March Madness tournament, you could send it back in for the jersey of your choice from any school. Suddenly, a black market for caps with blue chip schools was born. I remember selling a Duke cap for $10, then turning around and buying 10 drinks from the vending machine. Story 7. I organized the black market. My school banned Pokemon cards, so I made a new game with paper cards. I was drawing pretty well, so I folded a paper in 9, made pieces approximately the size of a Pokemon card, and created a whole new game out of this. Sold boosters for 10 cents. I spent all my afternoons drawing cards for school. Teachers eventually heard of it and couldn't ban it because it was just me distributing drawings. And then I started to do replicas of Pokemon cards. Like, people had to show me the proof after school that they owned the card. I made a replica, and then the whole Pokemon card trading continued with paper replicas. Then after school, people made the real exchanges based on what replicas they exchanged during school. Story 8. This wasn't a weird one, but a genius one for a tween. A girl set up a little business out of a box of stationery, writing forged letters from parents. She had all different paper, pens, and pencils of every kind, and could write in convincingly accurate tone for the content of the notes depending on which kid they were for. She used different styles of handwriting and different styles of punctuation and language too. She'd even fudge the spelling if she thought the kid's parents weren't great at it. She grew up to be incredibly educated. I look back and see that as her first moment of evil genius. It definitely suggested she would go on to brilliance one day, and she did. Story 9. Diddle paper. It's colored paper with a mouse drawn on it, but everyone collected them, no matter how old, and there were hundreds of different artworks. People had folders with protective covers, and depending on the motive and rarity you wanted to trade, you could get 3 to 4 others in exchange. It was wild. I just Googled it, and there are still collectors buying and selling them on the internet. Story 10. Our elementary school utilized ice cream tickets. You got one if it was your birthday, or if you did something that a teacher decided was exemplary. People would pass them around asking for favors down the line. Some kid found the paper used to make the tickets and Xeroxed multiple pages of the tickets. He became our kingpin and ruled for a couple years. Story 11. I think I was 16 when this happened, but basically a bunch of guys began printing paper that looked like contracts with the top saying soul contract. They'd come up to some of the younger students and get them to sign the document to sell their soul for eternity and would pay $2 to $3, converting to US dollars. We had a good laugh when some of the students became worried they actually sold their soul. Story 12. In year 10, I was able to gain access to a teacher's account on my school tablet, which allowed me to get internet access. I then realized I could open a hotspot, which allowed other students to have internet access on their tablets. We weren't allowed to have cell phones. I decided to charge $10 a week for each student that wanted to subscribe for internet access, which I was distributing. I started receiving requests from students not in the radius of the hotspot. Thus, I figured out a way for users to SSH connect to my school tablet and use it to gain internet access. It was a mess, and the network became too slow, but I was still getting paid regardless. Best of all, the IT guy knew what I was doing, but he wasn't able to stop it since the school only employed one guy to handle everything. Thus, he was too busy to do anything about it. Story 13. Drawings. It started out as a joke. Some kids make beautiful drawings and trade them for other drawings. At one point, we decided to give them a value. If a drawing was really pretty, let's say 8 out of 10, we would number it with 8, and you could trade it for 2 4s. There were kids that would not draw but were chosen to ride these drawings. At one point, kids would trade snacks for beautiful drawings. This started in my class, and in a couple of days, the whole school was doing this. My drawings were okay, but not great, and sadly, I never got snacks to bring to school, so I had nothing to trade. So I decided to recruit other kids that were really good and would be their manager so they had more time to draw. I had siblings in other grades, so I would contact them to trade these in their class so there was more ground to collect snacks from. I also bargained with the kids that would rate the drawings, promising them a share of the snacks. My clients would share their snacks with me as payment for my services. I still remember those stupid horseflower drawings. Horse girls went nuts over these and would give anything for them. In high school, I was the only kid in my year that knew how to download music to your phone. I would make a list of songs people want and would transfer these through Bluetooth. I would charge 1 cookie for 1 song. I could imagine one person figuring it out and either create competition or completely bring down the market. Story 14. Not really a black market, but kind of. It was in the 90s, and most people had a computer, but the internet was still very slow when you had it. I was a teen and had managed to get my hands on a CD-ROM with 3 videos on it. The kind of CD-ROM that was offered with the magazine you could find on the highest shelf of the newspaper stand. I was starting to know all 3 videos by heart, so I decided to lend it to a friend, and then I kind of forgot about it. A few days later, I noticed during the class that another unrelated person was lending my video to yet another guy. My CD-ROM was having a life of its own, moving from hand to hand, providing happiness along its way. I was very proud. Story 15. I ran a black market in my school. Remember Columbia House, where you could get 10 VHS movies for like 99 cents, but then you had to buy like 5 more at the regular price? So I did the math and figured out what the actual price per videotape was after all commitments to the club were made, and it was like $5. So I took orders from classmates, bought movies for them, and then sold them at a slight markup. Basically, I was undercutting Suncoast. Story 16. Pogs back in the 90s. Sure, you could easily trade your standard commercial Pogs out in the open. We'd do it before and after class. Teachers and administrators didn't care. "Oh look, it's got Simba on it. Cute," I recall one saying. But there was a darker, more twisted trading game afoot, lurking in the boys' bathroom mid-class. The kind that, if found, would easily get you detention, or possibly even suspension. Doom Pogs. Doom Pogs were awful and awesome all at once. Circular cutouts from old mags, gory grossness from Fangoria, creatively illustrated preteen brilliance like Master and Miss Alfred's written in marker over a picture of a cat, were just some of the devilishly deviant 7th grade wares you could find during emergency bathroom trips during 3rd and 5th period. It was quite a sight. And then, just as quickly as it began, it all came crashing down. Not because of a slip up by any one student. No, what killed the Doompog trade in our school was a sudden bursting in of the vice principal who had to really badly and couldn't hold it in till he got to the teacher's bathroom in the office. And there we were, caught red-handed. I wish I could say it was Madonna's glued over a yin-yang symbol that did us in that day, but the truth is, it was our own hubris and greed. And with that, the great Doompog trade died. Or so they thought. Story 17. Well, it was glue to get high on, but it has a weird story behind it. The school district gives out a mandatory anonymous quiz-like thing every other year. Basically, it asks you how safe you feel on campus, how close you are with the teachers, do you need help with schoolwork, the standard stuff to say they care when they're really only using it to slip in a question or two that they really want to know the answer of, but it's under the guise that they want to know about everything. Anyway, one of the sections they just added that year was about drugs. There had been reports to them of a problem in our school and in two others. So they asked the typical, have you ever felt peer pressured into drinking beer, wine, or any alcohol type things. And one of the questions was, have you ever felt the desire to inhale glue in order to feel high, or something to that effect? Everyone was so surprised at that question, and immediately after the test thing was over, we had our lunch break. So what do you know, everyone's trying to get their hands on the school's glue supply to see if it actually worked. And by the time our next period started, I think it's safe to say that a third of the school was high. So yeah, now there's a glue black market at the school. You can just about always find them in front of the school office too, which I think is just asking for trouble, but hey, nothing bad has happened to the kids who were doing it, so... Story 18. When my daughter was 9, I got a call from her school for an emergency parent-teacher meeting. I went to the school with my wife and met my ex-wife at the school because this was apparently a big deal. The teacher and principal presented us with the information that my daughter had been the ringleader with a number of other girls in organizing a fight club between the boys in her grade. My daughter had meticulously drawn out standings charts, kept the win-loss records from each recess period, and kept bios, including quotes, on each participant. She kept track to make sure that boys of similar fighting ability weren't paired with others who couldn't keep up. The winners at the end of each day got a kiss from the girl of his choice. She also kept track of who got the most kisses, which none of the others had thought of apparently, in order to keep something on the popular girls. She also offered betting odds and ran that on the side, betting in money and candy. This had been going on for almost a month. I was impressed, astonished that she had done all this work and had been so meticulous about it. The school employees and the ex were somewhat less impressed. We settled on 3 weeks of in-school suspension, and she got moved into a more advanced math class. This was about 13 years ago. She's just finishing her honors BA this year and is looking at her master's in the fall. I still reference the Fight Club occasionally, and I am still proud. Story 19. You know that dust that came off erasers? Well, my friend made that into a clay, and we made a black market with that. I was a decent student with standard grades who rarely ever spoke in class, but I had started so many black markets, at one point I had 3 running. I was the cause of most black markets in my grade, maybe in my school, save for that loom band girl. But since I already had black markets, people knew what I had was generally good, so when I started a new market, everyone wanted the eraser dust clay. Now, I know about supply and demand, so I price it pretty high. My friend who made the erasers got nothing out of it. I offered her the profit, but she declined. Anyway, it cost toys. I was in elementary school, and eventually became more than just an eraser dust clay market, and some people donated toys, wanting to come collect one for free. I kept everything in a bag, and at one point, I had maybe 20 people doing this with me. I had someone else as the face of the market, so I wouldn't take the blame when it was found out. It was sadly disbanded by a teacher, but lasted a good few months. But the best part is when it got disbanded, there were still toys people donated, with the expectation of getting something back, and I kept them. There was some cool stuff. I still have some of that stuff. I had a few more black markets, but this, it was my finest work.